This video is for entering a transaction, which is exercise 1-7 on page 1-28. To start this exercise, we're using the Photos Company home window, which is what we've been sitting in for all of our other videos. And we're going to click the General Journal icon. So when I click on this, my General Journal screen is going to pop up where I'm making an entry. There is another way to access that. If I click on the drop-down menu, I can create General Journal, and I'm going to get the same window that pops up. They're drawing attention to the fact that at the top it says General Journal, so I know I'm in the right thing. And at the bottom, it says Photos Company with, it should be your name by this point because we've changed our company information. So the name of the company is displayed on the bottom taskbar. You can turn that feature off, and which is discussed in chapter 4. I think that's mostly what we need to look at for right now. So this field for source refers to the source document. So this is the information where all the information being entered into the accounting system was taken from. So something like a bank debit or credit memo, an invoice number, a check number, return or adjustment numbers, a memo, if you were paying a bill, things like that. So for this example, the source that they want us to use is a bank debit memo. So we're going to type that into our source field. If we hit the tab key twice, it's going to take us, so the first time it takes us to the icon right beside it, which allows you to search for previously posted transactions that you're able then to reverse or correct or whatever it is that you need to do. But we're skipping over that for right now to the date field. The date field is the transaction date. This is different from the session date, and it is the date the transaction actually occurred. You can't always enter transactions on the day that they occur, depending on business volume. So although printed checks were received on the 18th, the bank charged our account on the 17th. The debit memo was issued on April 17th. Therefore, the transaction date is April 17th, 2024, even though this is not being entered until April 18th. You can never have a transaction date that is in the future, that falls later in the future than our session date. The session date is the actual physical date that we are making the entry into the system. So you can't enter something into the system that hasn't happened yet. So like it said, our transaction date is April 17th. The comment field is like the explanation field that we used in making journal entries when we did manual bookkeeping. In this case, they provide what they want us to type in. But this comment field is the who, what, and why you are making the entry, so that it makes sense to anyone else that is looking at this that didn't put the entry into the system themselves. So printing charges for new checks. And they want you to include your initials. The reason for this is that if somebody else is working in the Sage 50 software alongside you, not necessarily at the same time or in conjunction with, but if you have more than one employee who uses the software, it's a good idea to put your initials beside it so that if there's an issue, we know who to talk to about the entry that was made. So the next thing now is we are entering our accounts. So again, same as with manual bookkeeping, our debits always go first and our credits always go second. If we don't know what our account number is based on our chart of accounts, we can double click and this is going to bring up a list of accounts that we can use. So you can search by number, you can search by name, keeping in mind that chart of accounts, any asset accounts fall under 100, liabilities fall under 2, equity under 3, revenues under 4, and expenses under 5. So in this case, again, you can follow along in the textbook. It shows you what your screen should look like. It introduces us to the Add New Account button, which is the first line here. So if the account that I needed to use wasn't yet listed in my chart of accounts, I could double click that and add a new account. We're not going to do that right now, but we will cover that later on. So page 1-30 provides you a table showing the chart of accounts, the type of account, the normal balance, so whether it's a normal debit or credit balance, and a version of the DC Adler that we used in bookkeeping, where we learned which accounts increase with a debit and which accounts increase with a credit. One thing to note is that we are going to choose the wrong account and then correct the account before posting. So I'm on 1-30, step number 6. In the search field, type 5. So I didn't have my cursor in the search field, so it didn't actually physically put the number there. But you got the idea. It brought me down to the 5,000 series account. So then you can keep typing in the number to narrow down what you need to get to, in this case, 2. And so we are on the line for office supplies expense. If we had other numbers such as 5,220, you could continue entering the numbers. Or if you don't know the account number specifically, you can scroll through the accounts until you find the one that you need. So in this case, they want us to select office supplies expense. And you see that brings us now to the debit column where they want us to enter an amount. But now we've noticed that this is the wrong account and it needs to be corrected. So I'm simply going to highlight this and hit enter. And that's going to bring up my field. Or like before, I can double click. And again, it's going to bring up my account selection window. So the account that we actually needed to use was our bank charges expense, which is 5,180. So now I'm going to hit select on that. In the debit column, we're going to enter the amount 31 and press tab. And it automatically adds the cents to the entry, so $31, no cents. But if this was an entry that had change, so to speak, you do have to type it in. So for example, it was $50.25. You would need to enter the 50 decimal point 25 and then hit tab to move the cursor to the comment column. The comment column is slightly different than the comment column listed above. This is when you want to record additional information for each individual account. So here they want us to type printing charge new, new checks. We're going to hit tab, and that's going to bring us back to our next account. So we're still using the double entry method of bookkeeping, where we will always have equal debits and credit. So at a minimum, we are using at least 2 accounts. We can do compound entries, which are 3 or more accounts, but you will never have one single account on its own. So in this case, the bank charged us money for printing new checks. I have expensed that to my bank charges expense account, and there's going to be money leaving the business. So just like I analyzed transactions in ACC 126, I'm going to click my bank account, and you'll notice that it automatically puts in my credit amount. So be particularly careful when doing compound entries, because that amount will not be correct and will need to be changed. So they want us to put in $55 and hit tab. And note that this is an error that we're going to fix in step 15. So at the bottom, it does show us the total, our total debits and credits. Again, always need to balance. So I'm going to click the post button, which would normally post this to my general journal and my subsequent general ledger accounts. But because my transaction is not balanced, the system actually won't let me post the entry. So they're telling me to check the amounts that we have entered. One of them is incorrect. So the nice thing is that it is just a little bit of a check to make sure that you have entered it correctly. So we're returning to the general journal. We're going to put 31 where we had 55, my debits and my credits, now balance. So this is our completed journal entry. We're not going to click post just yet. Looking at page 1-32. We want to verify our entry before we post it. So before posting, it is best to check the accuracy of your journal entry. If there's an error, it may be easily corrected before posting. So there's 2 ways to correct an entry before posting. Highlight the wrong entry in the general journal window and type the correct information. Or if the entry has quite a few errors and it's best to start over, you can click the undo button, which is right up here. So the first was like we did when we hit the wrong account, we just simply changed what needed to be changed. If I had made several errors, I could hit undo and it would clear my entry completely. And I can do that because it has not yet been posted. If I had already posted it, I need to make my adjustments in a different way. So if I want to see what my entry is going to look like on my menu, I'm going to hit report and I'm going to display my general journal entry. This is what it's going to look like. I have a debit to my bank charges expense and I have an individual comment relating to that specific account. And then I have a credit to my bank account, reducing my bank account by the $31 that it cost me to get these checks printed. You can also do this, so I'm going to exit out of here. Rather than going to the report menu, you can also do this by hitting Control J. It's going to bring up the same thing. So we've made sure that everything is correct. One thing I did want to mention, sorry. You'll notice here this date says generated on June 28th, 2020. That date is always the actual real life date, not our session date, not our transaction date. I can't change it. It is automatically generated by the system and not something that can be modified. So even though for the purposes of this textbook, we're working in the year 2024, my generated on date is June 28th, 2020, which is today's date. Okay. So once I know that this is correct and I don't need to make any modifications, I can go back and I can post my entry. So I see this transaction was posted successfully as General Journal J1. As you're working through the textbook, you may notice that your journal entry numbers get out of line with what is in the textbook. The reason for this is that every time you make a correction to something that has been posted, you're going to be given new journal entry numbers. So if you make an error that wasn't made in the textbook, you are going to have different journal numbers than what the textbook will. Okay, so don't panic if that happens. So we're going to click OK to accept the posting confirmation. And we return to a blank entry or journal entry. So typically if I was making these entries, I'd probably be doing a bunch of them in a row. So it just saves me going out, going back in. In this case, we're not. So I'm just going to hit the X and that's going to bring me back to my home screen. So this video is approaching 15 minutes. So I'm going to wrap it up and I will continue on with the next one.